All right, part 2, solving compound inequalities. Our essential questions are the same as they were in part 1. How do you represent relationships between quantities that are not equal, and how can you solve inequalities? In this part, we're going to look at solving the inequalities instead of just graphing them. So solving and inequalities. A solution of a compound inequality involving and is any number that makes both inequalities true. So there are two ways to solve these inequalities. We're going to look at the problem. -3 is less than or equal to m minus 4, which is less than -1. The first way you can solve this is separating the compound inequality into two inequalities. So remember, your compound inequality is made up of two inequalities. So you're going to separate them. You should have -3 is less than or equal to m minus 4, and m minus 4 is less than -1. So you're going to add 4 to solve it. So this means in the end you're going to add 4 times. You should end up with 1 is less than or equal to m, and m is less than 3. You can graph that. So you have 1 is less than or equal to m, which is less than 3. And it is the graph below. So the other way you can solve this is isolate the variable between the inequality symbols. So instead of separating them, you're going to keep it the same, and you're just going to solve for both sides. So this means I'm still going to add 4. So whatever I do to the middle, I have to also do to the left and to the right. So I'm adding 4 to the middle and to both sides. So you're left with 1 is less than or equal to m, which is less than 3. And that is the same graph. So you end up with the same thing. It's just two different ways of solving. Solving an OR inequality. You solve each inequality separately and graph the OR inequality. So in this case, you're going to look, what are the solutions of 3t plus 2 is less than -7, or -4t plus 5 is less than 1. So you're going to solve each inequality separately. When I do this, I'm going to do both at the same time, but all the different problems. You can separate yours. So to my first left-hand problem, I have to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'll be left with 3t is less than -9. On the right-hand problem, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I have -4t is less than -4. Now, on the left-hand side, I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I'm left with t is less than -3. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to divide by -4. So remember, when you divide by a negative, you need to reverse your inequality. So you're going to flip it around. And you'll be left with t is greater than 1. Now you need to graph. So you have t is less than -3, and t is greater than 1. You want to graph that. Next part we're going to talk about is interval notation. You can use an inequality such as x is less than or equal to -3 to describe a portion of a number line called an interval, so a section of your number line. Interval notation includes the 3 special symbols. So you have a parenthesis, a bracket, and infinity. You use the parenthesis when it's less than or greater than. You would use a bracket when it's less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. So when you do not have your or equal to, it's a parenthesis. When you have your or equal to, it's a bracket. And your infinity is the interval that continues positively forever, and your negative infinity is when it continues negatively forever. So if we practice graphing bracket, which is your or equal to -4, 6, how do you write -4, 6? So your bracket -4, 6, parenthesis, as an inequality. think about what happens if it's a bracket. Is it going to be an open circle or a closed circle? And think about parentheses. Is it going to be an open circle or a closed circle? The bracket indicates that -4 is included, so it's a closed circle at -4. Your parenthesis indicates that 6 is not included, so it's an open circle. And then you shade what's in between because it's this portion of your number line. Your inequality is going to be -4 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 6. So what is the graph of x is less than -1 or x is greater than 2? And how would you write that in interval notation? So my graph is here, closed circle going to the left and open circle going to the right. The interval notation, since you can never really reach infinity, you will have a parenthesis, -infinity to -1, and then bracket because it is or equal to, or open parenthesis because you have an open circle to infinity, and again you have a parenthesis because you can never really reach infinity. Please make sure you complete the homework assignment after live class, and we will see you there.